Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty. His eyes were fixed on the large screen in front of him. The alien message played again for what felt like the 100th time that day. The blue-skinned creatures called themselves the Zephyrian Empire. Their words were clear and cold. "People of Earth," the alien leader said in perfect English. "Your world now belongs to us. You have 72 hours to leave your planet. If you do not go, we will make you go. This is not a request. This is a fact." Jake felt his jaw tighten. He had been in the military for 30 years. He had fought in wars across 3 different planets. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. An entire alien empire was claiming Earth as their property, like humans were just pests that needed to be removed. The communication officer, Lieutenant Bobby Hayes, looked up from his station. "Sir, we're getting reports from all over Earth. Every major city has received the same message. It's been broadcast on every radio and television channel. Even the internet is flooded with their announcement." Jake nodded slowly. The Zephyrians had done their homework. They knew how to reach every human on the planet at once. But what they didn't know was what humans did when someone tried to take their home away from them. Captain Lisa Barnes rushed into the command center. She carried a stack of reports in her hands, and her face was grim but determined. Lisa had been Jake's second-in-command for 5 years. She was tough, smart, and never backed down from a fight. "Admiral, I've got the latest intel from around the globe," she said, setting the reports on the table. "The President has declared a state of emergency. Congress has approved full military mobilization. The Russians, Chinese, Indians, Europeans, and Africans are all doing the same thing. Even the small countries that usually stay out of fights are calling up their armies." Jake picked up one of the reports and read quickly. The numbers were staggering. Every nation on Earth was putting every soldier, every ship, every plane, and every weapon they had into service. The United Earth Defense Force, which had been created just 5 years ago to handle asteroid threats and space pirates, was suddenly the most important military organization in human history. "What about our colonies?" Jake asked. "Mars, Luna, the belt stations?" "All responding," Lisa replied. "Governor Martinez on Mars says they're ready to fight. The moon bases are activating their defense systems. Even the mining stations in the asteroid belt are arming themselves with whatever they can find." Jake walked to the large window that showed the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian fleet was coming. Intelligence reports said they had over 2,000 ships. Their technology was more advanced than anything humans had ever built. They had conquered 17 different star systems in the past 10 years. Each time, the local species had surrendered quickly when faced with the Zephyrian war machine. But the aliens had made one big mistake. They had given humanity a common enemy. In his 30 years of military service, Jake had seen humans fight each other over resources, territory, and ideas. But he had also seen what happened when humans faced a threat that wanted to destroy them all. They stopped fighting each other and started fighting as one people. It didn't matter if you were American, Chinese, Russian, or African. When someone threatened to take Earth away from humanity, every human became a soldier in the same army. The communication system buzzed with an incoming message. It was from General Pete Collins at NORAD, the underground military command center in Colorado. "Admiral Morrison," Pete's voice came through the speakers. "I'm implementing Protocol Omega. All hidden assets are being activated. Every sleeper, agent, every secret weapon, every backup plan we've made for the past 50 years is now in play." Jake smiled for the first time that day. Protocol Omega was the most classified defense plan in human history. It had been created based on one simple idea. Someday, humanity might face an enemy that wanted to completely destroy them. When that day came, there would be no rules, no limits, and no mercy. The plan involved hidden weapon caches on every inhabited world. Sleeper agents who had been placed in civilian jobs across the solar system. Secret shipyards that could be activated in hours. even converted civilian ships that could be turned into weapons of war at a moment's notice. How long until the first Zephyrian ships arrive? Jake asked. Lisa checked her reports. Intelligence says 48 hours. They're moving fast, but they're also being careful. They probably expect us to try to negotiate or surrender once we see how big their fleet is. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. They don't know humans very well, do they? At that moment, communication requests started flooding in from military commanders around the world. Admiral Chen from the Pacific Fleet, General Rodriguez from the European Defense Force, Commander Patel from the Indian Space Navy, even Captain Anderson from the small but tough Australian Space Corps. Jake accepted the calls and found himself looking at screens filled with determined human faces. These were the people who would lead humanity's response to the alien threat. They came from different countries, different cultures, and different backgrounds, but they all had the same look in their eyes. They were ready to fight. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake said to the assembled commanders, "we all know why we're here. The Zephyrians think they can just show up and take our home away from us. They think we'll run away or give up when we see their big ships and fancy weapons. They're about to learn something about humans that 17 other species apparently never taught them." General Rodriguez leaned forward. "What's the plan, Admiral?" Jake looked at each face on the screens. "We're going to teach them that humans don't run. We don't surrender, and we sure as hell don't give up our home without the fight of their lives. They want Earth. They're going to have to take it from us piece by piece, and we're going to make them pay for every inch." The commanders nodded. They understood. This wasn't going to be a normal war with battles and treaties and negotiations. This was going to be a fight for survival. The Zephyrians had made it clear that humans had two choices: leave Earth or die on Earth. But they had forgotten about the third choice that humans always found in impossible situations: make the enemy pay such a high price that they wished they had never started the fight. As the meeting ended and the commanders signed off to prepare their forces, Jake turned back to the window. The stars looked the same as they always had. But everything had changed. In less than 2 days, those stars would be filled with alien ships that wanted to destroy everything humans had ever built. Jake thought about his daughter Katie, who was serving on a patrol ship near Jupiter. He thought about his grandson Tommy, who was just starting school on Luna Base. He thought about the billions of humans who were going about their normal lives, not knowing that their entire species was about to fight for its very existence. The Zephyrians had conquered 17 star systems. They had destroyed entire civilizations. They had weapons that could crack planets and ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks, but they had never fought humans before. They were about to discover why the most dangerous phrase in the galaxy was about to become "never threaten a human's home." The Zephyrian advance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Commander HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Dreadnought Dominion. He was a veteran of many conquests. In his 50 years of military service, he had seen dozens of species surrender when faced with Zephyrian might. The pattern was always the same. The primitives would see the size of the Zephyrian fleet and realize they had no chance. There would be some token resistance, maybe a few small battles, and then the leaders would come forward to negotiate surrender terms. It was efficient, clean, and profitable for the Empire. HFY looked at the tactical display showing the human solar system. Intelligence reports said the humans had only been in space for about 100 years. They had some basic ships and weapons, but nothing that could challenge Zephyrian technology. This should be one of the easier conquests of his career. "Sir," his navigation officer reported, "we're detecting human ships moving to intercept us. About 300 vessels of various sizes." HFY nodded. This was expected. The humans would make some brave gesture, lose a few ships, and then realize the hopelessness of their situation. "Very well. Signal the fleet to advance. Standard formation. We'll give them a demonstration of our power and then accept their surrender." But as the Zephyrian ships moved deeper into the solar system, something strange began to happen. The human ships weren't retreating. They weren't even trying to maintain a defensive position around their home world. Instead, they were advancing to meet the Zephyrian fleet head-on. Lieutenant Commander Amy Stone sat in the cockpit of her fighter, leading Wolfpack Squadron through the asteroid field near Mars. She had been a pilot for 12 years, and she had learned to fly in the worst conditions possible. Her squadron specialized in what the military called unconventional tactics, which was a polite way of saying they fought dirty. "Wolfpack, this is Leader," Amy spoke into her comm. "Remember what we learned fighting pirates in the Belt. These blue boys have better ships, but they fight like they're in a parade. We're going to use that against them." Amy's fighters dove into the asteroid field, using the floating rocks as cover. This was something no civilized military would ever consider. The risk of collision was enormous. One small mistake and a pilot would be smashed to pieces against a chunk of space debris. But humans had been flying through asteroid fields for decades. They knew how to use the rocks as shields, weapons, and hiding places. Amy waited until a Zephyrian cruiser passed close to a large asteroid, then fired her engines at full power, pushing the rock directly into the enemy ship's path. The Zephyrian captain tried to avoid the collision, but the asteroid was too big and moving too fast. The impact tore a massive hole in the cruiser's hull, sending it spinning out of control. "Direct hit," Amy reported. "These guys really don't know how to fight in the Belt." Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships were using tactics that violated every rule of civilized space warfare. They rammed enemy vessels with converted cargo ships packed with explosives. They used debris fields as weapons. They even attached rockets to asteroids and guided them into enemy formations. Captain Danny Wright commanded the New Houston, a converted mining ship that looked more like a flying junkyard than a military vessel. His ship was loaded with industrial explosives, the kind used for breaking apart asteroids. But Danny had found a different use for them. He maneuvered his ship to look like just another piece of debris floating in space. When a Zephyrian destroyer came close enough, Danny triggered every explosive charge on his ship at once. The blast was so powerful it vaporized the New Houston and took the enemy destroyer with it. But Danny and his crew had already evacuated to escape pods hidden throughout the asteroid field. They had planned for this from the beginning. Losing ships didn't matter if you could take the enemy with you and keep your people alive to fight again. Commander HFY watched the battle, reports with growing confusion. The humans were fighting like barbarians. They showed no concern for the proper rules of engagement. They treated their own ships as expendable weapons. They used the environment itself as part of their arsenal. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 6 ships in the past hour. The humans are using strategies we've never encountered before." HFY studied the battle displays. The human fleet was smaller and less advanced, but they were fighting with a ferocity that defied logic. Every time his ships destroyed a human vessel, 2 more seemed to appear from nowhere. And the humans were learning from each engagement, adapting their tactics in real time. "These tactics are barbaric," HFY muttered. "No civilized species fights like this." What the commander didn't understand was that humans had never been a civilized species in the way the galaxy defined civilization. They had evolved as persistence hunters, creatures that chased their prey across vast distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. They were tool users who turned everything in their environment into a weapon. And they were survivors who refused to give up no matter how hopeless the situation appeared. Lieutenant Jessica Martinez piloted her damaged fighter through a cloud of debris that had once been a Zephyrian battleship. Her left engine was gone and her weapons were nearly empty, but she wasn't done fighting. She spotted a group of enemy fighters pursuing a human transport filled with civilians evacuating from a research station. Jessica pushed her fighter to its limits, using the last of her fuel to ram one of the enemy fighters. The collision destroyed both ships, but the transport escaped with its precious cargo of human lives. All across the solar system, similar acts of sacrifice and determination were taking place. Human crews were ramming their ships into enemy vessels. Pilots were using their fighters as guided missiles. Even civilian ships were joining the fight, using mining equipment and construction tools as improvised weapons. The Zephyrian fleet, which had expected an easy victory, found itself engaged in the most brutal and chaotic battle in the Empire's history. The humans fought without regard for their own safety. They used every dirty trick, every underhanded tactic, and every environmental advantage they could find. Captain Roger Bell commanded the defense platform orbiting Earth's moon. His station was armed with mining lasers that had been converted into weapons. When a squadron of Zephyrian bombers tried to attack the lunar colonies, Roger used the moon's gravity to slingshot chunks of lunar rock directly into their flight path. "Command, this is Luna Defense," Roger reported. "We've got 6 enemy bombers down using moon rocks as artillery shells. These aliens really don't know how to fight in a gravity well." The battle raged for hours. Human reinforcements kept arriving from all over the solar system. Ships that looked like they had been built in someone's garage fought alongside military vessels. Converted civilian transports, mining ships, research vessels, and even luxury yachts armed with improvised weapons joined the fight. Commander HFY realized he was no longer fighting a military force. He was fighting an entire species that had declared war on his empire. Every human, from trained soldiers to civilian volunteers, was part of the resistance. They fought with a desperation and creativity that his computer models had never predicted. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different human vessels." HFY felt a moment of relief. Finally, the humans were coming to their senses. Accept their surrenders and prepare to take prisoners. But as the Zephyrian ships moved to accept the surrenders, the defeated human vessels suddenly exploded. Each one was packed with explosives, and the humans had used fake surrender signals to lure enemy ships into range. The blasts destroyed 2 Zephyrian cruisers and damaged several others. "They're using surrender as a weapon," the communications officer said in shock. "They're pretending to give up so they can get close enough to harm us." HFY felt something he had never experienced in his 50 years of military service. Fear. These humans fought without honor, without rules, and without any regard for the accepted standards of warfare. They turned every advantage against him. They used their own deaths as weapons. They fought like creatures that had nothing left to lose. The battle continued through the day and into the night of the human world. By the time the first phase of fighting ended, the Zephyrian advance fleet had been reduced by half, but the cost to humanity had been enormous. Hundreds of ships were destroyed. Thousands of brave men and women had given their lives. But as Commander HFY surveyed the wreckage of the battle, he realized that the humans were not defeated. More ships were arriving from the outer planets. The asteroid mining stations were being converted into weapons platforms. Even the civilian population was mobilizing for war. He had expected to conquer a primitive species in a matter of days. Instead, he had stumbled into a conflict that threatened to consume his entire fleet. The humans had shown him something that no other species in the galaxy had ever demonstrated. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves, and they were very, very good at making sure they didn't die alone. The reports coming back to the Zephyrian High Command made no sense. Science Officer Kelmar read them again, checking the numbers 3 times before transmitting his findings to the Imperial Palace. "High Command, this is impossible," Kelmar spoke into his communicator. "The humans are not just copying our technology, they are improving it. Our captured weapons are being modified and enhanced in ways that should take years of research to achieve. They are doing it in hours." Supreme Admiral Veltar listened to the report from his command ship in orbit around the Zephyrian home world. In his 300 years of service, he had never heard anything like this. Species were supposed to surrender when faced with superior technology, not turn that technology against its creators. "Explain what you mean by improving our weapons," Veltar demanded. Kelmar's voice was shaky with disbelief. Sir, we've analyzed wreckage from the battle near Mars. The humans took our plasma cannons and somehow increased their power output by 30%. They modified our shield generators to create new types of defensive barriers we've never seen before. They even took our communication equipment and turned it into jamming devices that are blocking our fleet coordination. On Earth, Dr. Kevin Hughes worked in a secret laboratory buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. Around him, teams of human engineers and scientists worked around the clock, taking apart every piece of Zephyrian technology they could get their hands on. Kevin had been studying alien artifacts for 10 years, ever since the first contact with peaceful trading species. But this was different. This was war, and every piece of enemy equipment was a puzzle that could save human lives. "Look at this," Kevin said to his assistant, Dr. Sarah Kim. "The Zephyrians use a crystalline matrix for their power cores. But see this inefficiency here? They're losing 20% of their energy to heat waste. If we modify the crystal structure like this," Kevin made quick adjustments to the alien power core, "we can increase output and reduce the heat signature." Sarah watched in amazement as the modified power core hummed to life with significantly more energy than the original design. "How did you figure that out so fast?" Kevin grinned. "Because humans have been improving other people's inventions for our entire history. We take something that works and make it work better. It's what we do." All across Earth, similar scenes were taking place. Human engineers, working with minimal sleep and maximum determination, were stripping down captured Zephyrian equipment and rebuilding it with human improvements. Plasma weapons became more powerful. Shield generators became more efficient. Even simple communications devices were being turned into tools of war. But the real awakening was happening among the civilian population. The Zephyrian occupation forces had landed in 12 major cities, expecting the same quick surrender they had received from other species. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire planet. In New York City, Colonel Rick Thompson led resistance, fighters through the subway tunnels beneath Manhattan. The Zephyrians had superior weapons and armor, but they had never fought in an urban environment like a human city. The tunnels, sewers, and skyscrapers became a three-dimensional battlefield where humans held every advantage. "They're used to fighting in open space or on simple colony worlds," Rick explained to his fighters as they prepared for another raid. "But human cities are designed like mazes. We know every tunnel, every rooftop, every hidden passage. They don't." Rick's team emerged from a subway grate right in the middle of a Zephyrian patrol. The aliens were caught completely off guard as humans attacked from above, below, and all sides at once. Before the Zephyrians could react, the humans had disappeared, back into the tunnels, leaving behind damaged equipment and confused enemies. Similar resistance movements had sprung up in every occupied city. In London, fighters used the old World War II tunnels to move unseen under the city. In Tokyo, resistance members used the complex train system to strike at alien positions and vanish before retaliation. In Moscow, civilians fought from building to building, turning every street into a battle zone. But perhaps the most surprising resistance came from places the Zephyrians had never expected. In rural Kansas, farmer Joe Martinez had converted his barn into a weapons manufacturing facility. Using farm equipment and chemical fertilizers, Joe was producing improvised explosives and surface-to-air missiles. 20 years in the Army taught me a few things, Joe explained to his neighbors as they loaded another batch of homemade rockets. And 30 years of farming taught me how to make things work with whatever I have on hand. These blue boys want to take our land? Let's show them what American farmers do to pests. Joe's missiles, built from tractor parts and agricultural chemicals, were crude compared to military weapons. But they worked, and more importantly, they could be built by anyone with basic mechanical skills and access to common farm supplies. The Zephyrian occupation commander, General Kretos, found himself facing something he had never encountered in 40 years of conquest. Every human civilian was a potential enemy. Every building could hide weapons. Every piece of human technology could be turned into a tool of war. These creatures are insane, Kratos reported to his superiors. They fight with farming equipment. They use their own vehicles as bombs. Their children are building flying machines to spy on our positions. We are not fighting a military. We are fighting an entire species that has declared war on us. Meanwhile, in cyberspace, a different kind of battle was raging. Programmer Helen Davis had assembled a team of hackers from around the world. Their mission was simple: get inside Zephyrian computer systems and cause as much chaos as possible. Their security is good, Helen admitted to her team, but it's designed to keep out other civilized species. They've never had to deal with humans who think breaking into computer systems is a sport. Helen's team had already accomplished several major victories. They had hacked Zephyrian communications to send false orders to enemy fleets. They had broken into supply systems to redirect Zephyrian resources to the wrong locations. They had even managed to turn some enemy weapon systems against their own ships. But Helen's greatest achievement was something the Zephyrians never saw coming. She had infected their entire communication network with a virus that would activate at a predetermined time. When it did, every Zephyrian computer system would receive the same message: a detailed analysis of human military capabilities, along with a simple warning: you have no idea what you're fighting. In the suburbs of Denver, 12-year-old genius Tony Kim was working on his own contribution to the war effort. Tony had been building and programming robots since he was 8 years old. Now he was using his skills to create swarms of tiny drones that could be controlled using modified gaming systems. "See, Mom," Tony explained to his worried parent. "The drones are too small for the alien sensors to detect. But when you put 100 of them together, they can carry enough explosives to take out an alien transport, and I can control them from my bedroom using my gaming computer." Tony's drone swarms were already being used by resistance fighters in 3 different cities. The tiny machines could fly through air vents, slip under doors, and attack from directions the Zephyrians never expected. And because they were controlled by gaming interfaces, almost any human teenager could operate them. The Zephyrian High Command was receiving reports that defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. The humans were not just resisting. They were adapting, evolving, and becoming more dangerous with each passing day. Every piece of Zephyrian technology that fell into human hands was improved and turned against them. Every human who died fighting was replaced by 2 more volunteers. Every city the Zephyrians occupied became a nightmare of hidden enemies and improvised weapons. Supreme Admiral Veltar studied the tactical reports with growing alarm. "How many human soldiers are we facing?" "Sir," his intelligence officer replied, "we don't think they have soldiers in the traditional sense. Every human civilian appears to be capable of combat. Our estimates suggest we are fighting the entire population of their species. That's approximately 12 billion potential enemies." Veltar felt a chill run through his body. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered worlds before, but they had always faced organized militaries with limited numbers. They had never tried to occupy a planet where every single inhabitant was a potential warrior. But the most disturbing reports were coming from human colonies throughout the solar system: Mars, Luna, the asteroid belt stations, and even the small research outposts on Jupiter's moons were all contributing to the resistance. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, and they were defending it with the fury of a species fighting for survival. The awakening was complete. Humanity had discovered what it was capable of when faced with extinction. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that treated war not as a political tool, but as a way of life. They would fight with farming equipment, if they had to. They would turn children's toys into weapons. They would use their own deaths as tools of victory. The Zephyrians had expected to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had awakened something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Emperor Kethron of the Zephyrian Empire sat in his throne room, staring at reports that should have been impossible. For 1,000 years, his empire had expanded across the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. Species surrendered quickly when faced with Zephyrian might. Conquest was efficient, profitable, and predictable, but the humans had changed everything. Your Majesty, General Thysakar approached the throne carefully. I must report that the human resistance is not weakening. It is growing stronger. Our intelligence indicates that human colonies we thought were defenseless have revealed hidden weapon systems. Their trade ships are transforming into warships. Even their diplomatic missions were apparently gathering intelligence for decades. Kethron's 4 eyes narrowed. Explain. Thysakar activated a holographic display showing the current state of the war. Red dots indicated Zephyrian forces. Blue dots showed human resistance. The blue dots were spreading like an infection across the galaxy. The humans had been preparing for this war for years before we ever contacted them, Thysakar continued. Every colony, every outpost, every trade mission was part of a larger defense network. When we attacked Earth, we triggered a response that spans dozens of star systems. At Proxima Centauri, Captain Nina Foster commanded what the Zephyrians had thought was a simple mining operation. The truth was very different. For 5 years, human colonists had been converting their mining equipment into ship-killing weapons while maintaining the appearance of peaceful mineral extraction. Nina stood on the bridge of the converted mining platform, New Frontier, watching. Zephyrian ships approached their position. The enemy probably thought they were facing helpless civilians. They were about to learn the truth about human deception. All stations, this is command. Nina spoke into her communicator. These aliens think they can take our homes because we're far from Earth. Let's teach them that distance doesn't matter when you threaten human families. The Zephyrian squadron commander expected no resistance from the mining colony. His ships approached in a standard formation, preparing to demand surrender. Instead, they were met with a barrage of weapons fire from what they had thought were simple industrial facilities. The mining platforms opened up with railguns designed for breaking apart asteroids. The weapons were crude but devastating, capable of punching holes through starship hulls. Converted ore haulers, now armed with improvised missile systems, swarmed the enemy formation like angry wasps. Nina's flagship launched a cloud of mining drones that had been reprogrammed for combat. Each drone carried a small explosive charge, and they attached themselves to enemy ships like mechanical parasites before detonating. Target their engines first, Nina ordered her weapons crews. Dead ships can't run home to tell their friends what happened here. The battle was over in 20 minutes. The entire Zephyrian squadron was destroyed, and the humans had suffered only minor damage. But more importantly, they had sent a message. Every human colony, no matter how small or distant, was ready to fight. Back on Earth, the war was consuming both civilizations, but the humans were fighting with something the Zephyrians had never encountered: complete commitment to victory at any cost. While the aliens were trying to maintain an empire, humans were fighting for the survival of their species. Dr. Sam Peters worked in laboratories hidden deep in the Colorado mountains. His team had been studying Zephyrian biology since the first. Alien prisoners were captured. Now they were developing weapons specifically designed to target alien physiology. The Zephyrian respiratory system is based on a completely different chemical process than ours, Sam explained to his research team. If we can create an airborne agent that interferes with their oxygen absorption, we can neutralize entire enemy units without harming human forces. Sam's work was controversial, even by wartime standards. Biological weapons had been banned by human treaties for decades. But when faced with extinction, humanity had decided that survival was more important than moral purity. I know what we're doing here, Sam said quietly to his assistant. In peacetime, this would be considered a war crime. But these aliens didn't give us a choice. They want to kill every human in the galaxy. We're going to make sure they fail." Meanwhile, General Kate Adams was turning Earth itself into a weapon. From her command center in Antarctica, she coordinated planetary defense systems that used the planet's natural forces as tools of war. Seismic charges, originally designed for geological research, could now create artificial earthquakes under Zephyrian landing sites. Weather modification systems built to control hurricanes and droughts were generating massive storms that grounded enemy aircraft and disrupted their operations. "The aliens think they're fighting human technology," Kate explained to her staff. "But they're actually fighting the Earth itself. We've turned our entire world into a fortress, and every natural force is now working for us." Kate's most ambitious project involved Earth's magnetic field. Using a network of powerful electromagnets hidden around the planet, her team could create magnetic anomalies that disrupted Zephyrian navigation systems. Enemy ships would find their instruments giving false readings, leading them into prepared ambush zones. The war had been raging for 8 months, and the psychological impact on Zephyrian forces was becoming impossible to ignore. For the first time in their military history, Zephyrian commanders were requesting transfers away from human territories. Reports spoke of nightmares, nervous breakdowns, and complete loss of morale among troops who had once been considered the finest warriors in the galaxy. Commander Zix High, the veteran who had expected an easy conquest of Earth, now commanded what remained of his fleet from a heavily damaged flagship. Half his ships were gone, and his crew was on the edge of panic. "Sir," his medical officer reported, "we have 43 cases of combat stress disorder among the crew. The soldiers are afraid to go on patrol. They say the humans fight like demons, using tactics that no civilized species would consider." Zix High understood their fear. He had seen human fighters ram their ships into Zephyrian vessels, rather than allow themselves to be captured. He had watched human civilians strap explosives to their bodies and walk into enemy positions. He had witnessed human children building weapons from toys and household items. The humans didn't just fight wars, they became war itself. Every aspect of their society, from their entertainment to their education to their family life, could be instantly converted into tools of conflict. They were a species that had evolved to survive impossible odds, and they treated the Zephyrian invasion as just another impossible situation to overcome. But perhaps the most terrifying reports came from Zephyrian intelligence officers who had infiltrated human communication networks. They discovered that the humans were not just fighting defensively. They were planning offensive operations that would carry the war directly to Zephyrian space. Admiral Jake Morrison, now commanding the combined human fleet from a hidden base in the asteroid belt, was coordinating the most ambitious military operation in human history. Operation Homecoming would take the fight directly to the Zephyrian Empire's core worlds. "They started this war by threatening our home," Jake explained to his senior officers. "We're going to end it by showing them what happens when you make that mistake. Every Zephyrian world that supported this invasion is now a legitimate military target." The human fleet had grown beyond anything the Zephyrians thought possible. Converted civilian ships, newly constructed warships, captured and modified alien vessels, and even improvised weapons platforms built from asteroid mining equipment. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a military-industrial complex dedicated to one goal, making the Zephyrians regret their decision to threaten humanity. Captain Lisa Barnes, now commanding her own battle group, studied the intelligence reports on Zephyrian core worlds. "Admiral, their home planets are defended, but not against the kind of attack we're planning. They've never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory." Jake nodded. "That's because they've never fought humans before. They're about to learn why every species in the galaxy should remember one simple rule: never threaten a human's home unless you're prepared for total war." As Operation Homecoming moved into its final planning stages, reports began reaching the Zephyrian High Command that chilled them to their cores. Human fleets were massing in deep space. Weapons platforms were being deployed along hyperspace routes. The humans were not content to defend their solar system. They were preparing to bring the war to every world that had supported the invasion of Earth. Emperor Kethron realized that his empire faced something it had never encountered. In its 1,000-year history, an enemy that would rather destroy everything than accept defeat. The humans had made it clear that they would burn down the galaxy before allowing themselves to be enslaved. The escalation was complete. What had begun as a simple conquest had become a fight for the survival of both civilizations. But only one side was truly prepared for that kind of war. The humans had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to survive when everything was against them. The Zephyrians were about to discover why that was a very dangerous enemy to create. The final battle did not take place among the stars. It happened in the Great Council Chamber of the Galactic Assembly, where representatives from 200 different species gathered to witness the end of the most destructive war in galactic history. Ambassador Claire Johnson stood at the speaker's podium, her uniform bearing the scars of personal combat. She had fought in the defense of Luna Base when Zephyrian forces tried to capture the moon. Her left arm was still in a medical brace from that battle, but her voice was strong and clear. Around the chamber, alien representatives sat in stunned silence. For 18 months, they had watched the human-Zephyrian conflict consume entire star systems. What had begun as a simple imperial conquest had become a galactic crisis that threatened the stability of civilized space. Honored delegates, Claire began, her words translated into dozens of alien languages. You asked to understand what humans do when faced with extinction. You wanted to see how a species reacts when someone tries to take away their home. Now you know. The holographic displays around the chamber showed the true scope of human mobilization. Every factory on every human world had been converted to war production. Every civilian had been trained for combat. The entire human species, all 12 billion individuals across dozens of star systems, had become a military force dedicated to one goal: making the Zephyrian Empire pay for its mistake. Emperor Kethron, attending the session through a secure communication link, looked older than his 1,000 years. His empire, which had once controlled a quarter of the galaxy, was collapsing. The war with humanity had consumed so many resources that other subject species were beginning their own rebellions. We underestimated them, Kethron admitted to the assembly. We thought they were just another primitive species that could be conquered through superior technology. We were wrong. Supreme Admiral Veltar, scarred and exhausted, provided the military report that shocked the galactic community. In 18 months of warfare, humanity has destroyed 60% of our fleet. But that is not the most disturbing fact. The most disturbing fact is that they are stronger now than when the war began. The alien delegates murmured in disbelief. How could a species grow stronger while fighting for survival? Claire answered their unspoken question. Because war is what humans do. We have been fighting for our entire evolutionary history. We fought ice ages, predators, diseases, natural disasters, and each other. We learned to turn every challenge into an opportunity. We learned to make weapons from anything we could find. We learned that the only way to survive is to never give up. She activated a display showing human colonies throughout the galaxy. You see mining operations. We see future weapons factories. You see trade routes. We see supply lines for military operations. You see civilian populations. We see armies waiting to be activated. Every human settlement, no matter how peaceful it appears, can become a fortress in a matter of hours. The truth was becoming clear to the assembled aliens. Humanity had not just been preparing for this war since first contact with the Zephyrians. They had been preparing for it their entire history as a species. Every human invention, every cultural development, every aspect of their civilization could be instantly converted to military purposes. Commander Zixhai, now missing his left arm and bearing scars from 17 different battles, provided his final report to the assembly. They do not fight wars like civilized species. They become war. Every human is a weapon. Every human world is a military base. Every piece of human technology is a tool for conflict. His voice shook as he continued. We destroyed their cities, and they fought from the ruins. We captured their planets, and they turned the very ground into a weapon against us. We killed their soldiers, and their civilians took their places. There is no way to defeat them through conventional conquest, because they will never stop fighting. Captain Ryan Wells, commanding the human fleet that had arrived to escort the delegation, provided the final piece of evidence. His ships filled the space around the Galactic Assembly Station, not as a threat, but as a demonstration of human capabilities. This is just the advance guard, Ryan explained to the stunned delegates. Behind us are fleets from every human world, generation ships that have become mobile fortresses, colony vessels converted into weapons platforms. Even our civilian transports are now armed for combat. The assembled aliens could see the truth in their sensors. The human fleet was enormous, but it was not just military vessels. They had brought entire populations, complete industrial bases, and mobile shipyards. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a military force capable of projecting power across the galaxy. But it was the economic reports that finally convinced the Zephyrian Empire to seek peace. The war had cost them everything. Their treasury was empty. Their industrial base was in ruins. Their military was demoralized and defeated. Other species in their empire were demanding independence, inspired by human resistance. We cannot continue this conflict, Emperor Kethran finally admitted. The cost has become unbearable. Claire nodded, but her expression remained hard. The cost was always going to be unbearable. That was the point. We made it clear from the beginning that attacking Earth would be the most expensive mistake your empire ever made. The peace negotiations were swift but brutal. The Zephyrian Empire agreed to complete withdrawal from all human territories, massive, war reparations, and the release of all captured humans. But most importantly, they agreed to the establishment of what became known as the Terra Clause in galactic law. The Terra Clause was simple. Any species that declared war on humanity would be considered an enemy of galactic civilization. Any attempt to conquer or occupy human worlds would result in immediate sanctions from all other species. The clause was passed unanimously by the Galactic Assembly, but the real victory was written in the unofficial understanding that spread throughout civilized space. It became known as Rule 1 for all species. Never claim Earth unless you want war. As the Zephyrian delegation signed the surrender documents, Admiral Jake Morrison, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces, made a statement that would be remembered for centuries. We did not want this war, Jake said quietly. We would have been happy to live in peace with the Zephyrian Empire. But when someone threatens to take our home away from us, when someone tries to enslave our species, when someone forces us to choose between freedom and death, we will always choose to fight. He looked directly at the Zephyrian Emperor. We did not start this war, but we made sure we finished it. The war had lasted 18 months. The human casualties numbered in the millions. Entire cities had been destroyed. Whole fleets had been lost. The cost in blood and resources had been staggering. But humanity had achieved something no species had accomplished in 10,000 years of galactic history. They had earned the right to be left alone. The price had been terrible, but the message was clear. Humans would burn down the galaxy before accepting slavery. As the last Zephyrian ship disappeared into hyperspace, Claire Johnson stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Assembly Station, looking out at the human fleet. Thousands of ships from dozens of worlds, all flying the blue banner of Earth. A species that had been in space for barely a century had become one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy. Her communication device buzzed with a message from Earth. the rebuilding had already begun. Human colonies were expanding. New ships were being built. The war was over, but humanity had learned a valuable lesson. In a galaxy full of predators, the best defense was to be the most dangerous predator of all. Dr. Kevin Hughes, now working on civilian projects again, sent a report to the human government that would shape policy for generations to come. We now have technology that is decades ahead of what we had before the war. Captured and improved Zephyrian equipment, combined with human innovation, has advanced our civilization by at least 50 years. But perhaps the most important outcome was the change in how other species viewed humanity. Before the war, humans had been seen as newcomers to galactic civilization, interesting but not particularly dangerous. Now they were seen as the species that had broken the most powerful empire in the galaxy through pure determination and refusal to surrender. The lesson spread throughout civilized space, passed from species to species, recorded in the histories of every world. If you want to conquer the galaxy, that is your choice. If you want to enslave other species, that is your decision. But if you ever, for any reason, threaten to take Earth away from the humans, prepare for a war that will consume everything you have ever built. Rule 1 for aliens had been established, through blood and fire. Never claim Earth unless you want war, because humans had proven, beyond any doubt, that they would rather die free than live in chains. And they were exceptionally good at making sure they did not die alone.